Welcome to the Inside Out Money Podcast.
Can't even recognize this place. Too many pieces of our past mistakes.
Hi, I'm Maggie, and I believe real change starts from the inside out. So let's work together to improve our money and our lives from the inside out. We will explore all things money and our relationship with it. Join me each week with a rotating set of co-hosts, friends, and interviews. Let's jump in.
It's time, we going round and round and round and round and round.
Hey, Andrew.
Hey, Maggie.
It's good to see you.
Same here. Welcome back from your trip.
Yeah, thank you. I'm excited because we're going to talk about, we tease something with you of like what you're doing post leaving corporate America.
Yeah.
We teased it like right before I left for vacation, and we had pre-recorded something, and then we were going to connect to do a bonus episode and post it before I left, and we were both busy. And I had a few people that like checked in and were like, you left us hanging. Like, what's going on with Andrew? So
I'm glad people are interested, so I'll take that.
Well, we're going to leave you hanging a little bit longer. But we do promise we will share it at the end of this episode, right?
Yes, definitely.
Yes. Okay.
We'll talk about it.
Welcome. If you're not sure where you're at and at the end of what episode we'll be sharing, welcome to Inside Out Money. This is a personal finance podcast focused on redefining wealth from the inside out. Every week I speak with a rotating set of co-hosts about a different financial topic to help you improve your financial mindset and tactics. Today we have co-host Andrew here, and we are going to talk through all of the ways that you can earn more money from asking for a raise to starting a side hustle.
Or to just being really good at your current job.
Yeah, exactly, which is a big one we'll talk about. But I think this is a good topic because, you know, we often talk about how the key to growing wealth is spending less than you make. And we've focused literally hundreds of episodes on how to spend less and how to save money. But there are times when you can't cut back any further, which isn't most people. I would argue that there's always more you could do. But there's times when like you just can't out budget where you're at, right? You need to kind of play offense and defense, if you will, right? And so there are times when you should put energy into the things you need to do to make more money, just like you can put energy into how you can save money.
Yeah, and an extra dollar earned is just as important as a dollar saved. And so I think in both of our instances, we've optimized on both ends, both on the income side and on the expenses side to be successful in getting to FIRE. But you and I talk more about the expense side of the equation than we do on the income side. And so I'm glad we're able to do this episode because we have both benefited from my phrase I like to use is we both had really big shovels. And so if you got a big shovel and you can dig a big hole, it makes the game a lot easier.
Well, that reference to a big shovel is a good segue to one of the reasons I think we both have good shovels, big shovels, good big shovels, is we were both good at our jobs. We worked hard. We had the right skill sets, the right attitudes. We'll talk about that. But one of the number one ways to make more money over time, not overnight, is to be really good at your job. And I'm not saying like, just do a great job and like great things will come to you over time magically. But if you're in the right place and you have the right boss and you have the right people looking out for you and you really are good at your job and you are like indispensable and beyond good, things will come and opportunities will come your way. And there's a lot of things you need to do to foster and grow that. But one of the best things you can do to make more money is to focus on becoming really good at your job and being a really good employee and recognizing that your job as an employee is to make your boss's life and job easier, right? Like you want to be their favorite employee.
That was always a focus of mine, and something I always told my direct reports and those earlier in their careers is your goal is to make your boss look good. And it doesn't matter if, the good bosses don't take all the credit, and they will they'll willingly share that credit. But even if you've got a boss who likes taking the credit, the more you can make your boss look good to their boss, the better. And especially in corporate America, where it's very hierarchical. If you work at a smaller company that's less hierarchical, it's a flatter structure, it's less important. But it still matters even in small companies that the better you can make your boss, the more indispensable you become as an employee, the better it will work out for you.
Yeah, one of my favorite books that I read very early on in my career was called Lynchpin by Seth Godin. And you can Google this, but there's this thing, he had this one pager called the Lynchpin Manifesto. And it just had a bunch of like mantras and things. And I'll read a few of them, but it's like, I'm a linchpin. I'm not easily replaced. If it's never been done before, even better. Every interaction is an opportunity to make a connection. I'm always moving. I don't care about credit. We care about change. Like, we're here to make something happen. The work matters. It's all of these positive phrases and mantras. And again, that's just that there's an actual book. That's just this sort of like one-page manifesto. But I always like that because it really was about like being the best that you can be and focusing on being a really good employee. And I took that approach in my career. Andrew, I worked alongside you for many years and watched you, and I think you did too. And you took pride in your work. You worked hard. You went above and beyond. You did a good job. You asked questions. You were a learner. And you were promoted as a result, right? And sometimes you had to ask for things, and sometimes they were just handed to you. It was probably a mix of both. But when there were opportunities, and we both happened to be in fields that were growing, which was helpful in terms of like digital, but we had additional opportunities, which brought us additional income. And we had people that thought very well of us at the current companies we were at and at past companies that we could tap into. So, we proactively managed our career, right? I always say, like, you've got to ask questions, like ask your manager and other people at your manager's level, other people above you, ask them where the gap is between where you're at now and the next role you want to get to. Like, say, hey, what do I need to work on? Like, ask questions, ask for feedback. Even if you're not being proactively given feedback, it's your job to ask for feedback. It's your job to network. I know the term networking has, some negative connotations with some people, but like, it's all about relationships. Like, you've got to market yourself. Visibility matters. You've got to go into the office. You've got to build relationships. You've got to send out email summaries of big launches and why it matters and what the impact is that it has on the company. And like, that stuff matters. And I think there's so much of like when people want more money and then want to ask for a raise even, which we'll talk about later, the number one thing before you ever even get to that point is you've got to feel very confident that you are good at your job and that you are like arguably indispensable.
So let's talk about the indispensable piece. I always like to say that everybody's replaceable.
Everybody is.
At the end of the day, right? Yes. The question is when you're replaceable. So if you are replaceable, and I always like to use the, you win the lottery and you give your notice the next day.
Yeah, not that you hit by the bus. Right.
I don't like the hit by the bus one. The lottery one's a little bit better. But you win the lottery and you go and you tell your boss, okay, I've won the lottery. Peace out. I'm out of here today. The question is how much pain is involved in your removal, right? And that's ultimately the measure of your indispensability is how hard are you to replace and the pain that is caused, because everyone is replaced. They will eventually figure it out. And I always I kind of...
How many people are upset that you're gone? Right? How many people have you upset with your leaving? Right.
Or actually people cheering that you have left, right?
You're right. Yeah.
which is the
I know some people would leave and we were like, oh, thank goodness they did that.
Right, exactly.
Right?
And then you got people crying in a corner because you have done such a good job and you have been that person that people have relied on to get stuff done.
Yes.
Right.
And your attitude matters, right? Like,
oh, man.
I remember early on in my career,
it
I
more
had to
than
tell
matters.
people this. I had to say, like, hey, we can see your face in meetings. Like, and I'm not like a one to say like fake it. Like, I remember actually once I was at like a leadership course and they were talking about like all these things, and I was like, I asked the person teaching, and I said, well, hey, at what point is this like I'm being fake? I'm not being myself. And he was like, you are practicing the person you want to become. And I was like, that is a great way of framing it because, I don't want to be unhappy. Sometimes I have a bad day, but like, I want to build people up. I'm an optimistic person generally. I want to be an energizer, right? Like I want to put energy into the room. I don't want to suck energy out of the room, but we all know people that we worked with that were like energy drainers,
right.
Like
the Debbie Downers in the room.
Every interaction was just sort of like,
yeah. Right.
And you don't want to be that person. So like, I'm not saying fake it till you make it, but some days I did have to like put on a smile because it wasn't worth bringing some other stuff into the office with me.
I will go as far as to say you actually do need to fake it at times because how you say
at times is
at
the
times,
right,
yeah.
I'm not saying like fake it when your like mother just died or
right.
something crazy.
How you say things is actually more important than the content of what you actually said and the body language that you display. I had so many times with colleagues and members of my team where their body language was just awful and they just couldn't get away from it. And you're not going to like working with everybody. And the best test is, do people know that you don't like working with them? If they do, you failed. If they don't, you're winning. And so I think likability, especially in a larger corporate matrix structure, is so important.
It's critically important. And think of it as diplomacy, right?
Yeah.
Like my kids the other day were asking what diplomatic meant, and I was like explaining it to them, and I was like, it matters that you can get along with like all different types of people,
yes.
even when and that you're the one that's able to like bridge the gap and get everyone to a common understanding. And when you've got 10 different personalities that can't seem to like get their crap together, that you're the one that can work across the room and make things happen. And like, that's an incredibly important skill set. And it's a little bit of a cheesy book, but I also like the book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There.
Yeah.
It goes through some like very EQ focused leadership skill sets of like, just because you're a really good individual contributor doesn't mean you'll be a great people manager, right? So if your goal is to become a people manager and a leader, you need to upskill and like focus on continuing education and do things on your own proactively, like ask for opportunities at work, but also like go read books, go listen to podcasts, go watch YouTube videos, like take it into your own hands to become as good as you can be at what you are doing and what your specific job might be.
Yeah, I think in the earlier years of your career, those hard skills are what get you places, right?
Yes.
If you are a brilliant accountant, I always tell people the three most important skills coming out of college are Excel, PowerPoint, and Outlook. People forget Outlook, but being able to manage your email appropriately and being able to stay on top of your email is super important. But man, if you could, the number of people who I see, recent college grads, I had a lot of interns on my team. I had a lot of recent college grads, and man, if you had Excel skills, you're well ahead of others. And so those hard skills are what going to help you in those first 5 to 10 years of your career. But the longer you go in your career and also the higher up you go, it's all about the EQ. It's all about those soft skills that really help you go places.
Yeah, and I'd argue too, if you have those soft skills in the first 5 to 10 years, you'll surpass others around you that are still figuring them out. So, okay, so I mean, the great way to make more money is like you got to be good at your job, right? Because it's hard to make more when you're not. But a very common question that I would get from people is how to ask for a raise. And I have like I was going to say like detailed, but also like I have very strong and detailed thoughts on this. Do you, Andrew?
I have some general principles, I think, when it comes to, I think it's very dependent on the company that you work for. I've worked for companies where it was very frowned upon to even mention it. I've had others where it's been more receptive. I think when it comes to just negotiating your offer, right? I always tell people I never disclose what I'm making. I always, everyone always wants to know, well, what are you making? I never disclose that. You don't show your cards. And if a recruiter or person asks, you always say, you never lie about it. You always say, my expectations are X amount, right? And I always keep what I'm currently making private, because at the end of the day, it's none of their business. If they're asking you about that, they're trying to benchmark you, and typically they're trying to lowball you on an offer, right? So when it comes to offers, that's my approach. When it comes to, you're in the job, you got to know your market, right? And you have to know whether you are underpaid, at market, or overpaid. And typically you're going to fall into one of those three buckets. The good companies don't underpay people because they know it's a losing strategy. Most of the companies I've worked for have been market or above market. And they are, I've had HR teams come to me and say, hey, this person on your team is under market and we're giving them a bigger raise because we're doing some adjustments, right? And that's how most good companies operate, because you're going to lose people if you're not paying market rates.
Look, that's how bigger companies with more established HR teams operate.
Right. Yeah.
So we're people listening could be working for, tiny companies,
Correct.
Small businesses, all sorts of things.
But ultimately you need to know your market, and then
you got to have a reason.
Yes, and then it comes
right?
then it comes to
your job.
Right.
You got to know that you got to have some research and data that makes you believe that you are underpaid. Because if you're already paid really, really well, it's hard to ask for a raise.
Correct. Yeah. So I think when it comes to you're in the job, knowing your market, and then the approach is, how do you demonstrate value? At the end of the day, every company is looking at the ROI of, hey, we're giving you a paycheck and we're paying you this amount of money. What is our return on that? And so if you're able to demonstrate your value of how much you are delivering for the company, then that can make a very strong argument when it comes to the negotiation. If you have delivered a project that far exceeded expectations, that delivered either incredible top-line sales or bottom-line profitability or expense savings, it can be significant.
Yeah, you're good.
Right.
Yeah, you're good at your job. You've gone above and beyond, and you have some data that tells you that you are perhaps underpaid, and that's likely third-party data. So you could go look at like open job listings. You could go look at websites like Glassdoor, like PayScale. There's a bunch of different websites that have information like this. You could just go look at job postings, because some companies do post their
salary transparency is now much, much better than it was, just because of some of the laws that were passed, especially in places like New York and others, that you should have a general good idea of the range for your role at this type of company, right? Size of company matters. Your role, like a director at Apple is going to be making a lot more than a director at a $10 million small business, right? And so you've got to know size of company, your level, size, scope, and scale of the position, and so understanding all of those things. And then, I also find, yes, you can look at third-party data. I actually find that actually going on some interviews and talking to recruiters is the best way to truly you get a good sense of the market, right?
Because that is more valued data in terms of it actually applies to you, and you know that there's a sense of like, these companies would be interested in me and they would pay about this much money. But here's my like biggest, best advice for asking for a raise. And I will say, someone else gave me this advice 20 years ago, and it was the best advice I've been given on this topic. And I've heard it repeated in many different ways, and I've also been on the receiving end of people asking for more money, and I think it is one of the best ways to do it at any company, any size. But the foundation has to be there of what Andrew and I just talked about. Let's say you have that foundation there. First off, I'm going to go through like a few things around this. Like, you need to schedule a meeting. You don't just hit your boss in the hallway on the way to another meeting. You don't hit them on their way out of the office for the night. This isn't like an elevator discussion. You schedule a 30-minute meeting. You say you have some career-related things you wanted to talk about. Think about the timing, right? Don't do it right in the middle of like company layoffs, right? Don't do it right when your boss just got back from a funeral. Like, be a little bit thoughtful of when you schedule that meeting, but schedule a proper meeting. and show up prepared. And as we just discussed, have a case. And the case is not, oh, I heard that Johnny's making $5,000 more than me. That is not a reason to give you a raise, right? Now you can say, hey, I believe I have some intelligent, don't name, you don't win yourself any favors by naming names, by the way. Like, it just creates a lot, especially big companies, it just creates a lot of problems. But you can say, it's my understanding that there are other people at my peer group that make more than me, and I believe I am outperforming them. And here's why. And you can state that, like, be strong, right? Be confident in your abilities. And again, it's okay to compare yourself to other people and to say, I believe I am underpaid. And I'd like to know where I'm at in range, if not, like, because some companies do have ranges, and they sometimes will disclose where you're at in the compensation range for a particular role. But okay, so you want to schedule a meeting. You want to have like a very clear case and value for why you think you deserve a raise or why you think you're underpaid or whatever it might be. And the biggest piece of advice, you are not asking for something right now. You are not saying like, I want $5,000 today. Right? Because putting someone on the spot, especially at a big company like that, your boss cannot give you a yes or no in that meeting. They're going to have to take it to HR. They're going to have to take it to finance. There's a whole bit of
compensation committee.
Yes. Sometimes you're at a tiny company and maybe you're dealing with somebody that can make that decision. But putting somebody, that's my biggest piece of advice. Putting somebody on the spot and like they're back in a corner, it's not helpful, right? It's treating it as like an event versus you're saying like, look, this is a career and I'm on a continuum, and you want to lead with like, talk about your love and appreciation for the job, like, stroke their ego. People like to hear how much you love the company, how much you appreciate all that they've done for you. You're not putting them on the spot because you understand how things work, right? And you're showing your EQ in this moment. You're saying something like, I really like working here. I really appreciate everything you've done for me in my career. I get the sense I am not at a high percentage in the comp range for this position, yet I feel like I'm one of the highest performers in this role. And I would like to talk about what it would take for me to get to feeling like I am paid where I should be and that I'm valued for the role that I'm doing for this company. And I would like to talk about what would it take for me to get to a place where I am on the highest percentage of the compensation range for this role. And can we get into the specifics of what that looks like and what that would look like for me, right? And that was a very vague example I just gave. You could be more specific and say, I think there's a $10,000 gap. I'm making $80,000, but I really would like to be making $90,000, and here's why I think that's appropriate. So you can get more specific, and you can say, I'm not asking for it right now in this moment. I would like to figure out what will it take to get me from where I'm at now to where I'd like to be and where I feel like I deserve to be paid for the value that I'm providing for this role, right? And it's, again, you can't compare it to what some other dude's making. Like, that's not a reason to give you a raise. You don't know anything about what that other person is doing.
Right. And I like that approach. I'd say one thing that has tripped people up is they start mentioning things about their personal situation, bringing up that you've got 2 kids in daycare, or bringing up that you want to move house, or you want to get anything that is personal
kids
related.
Are in private school,
right?
Yeah,
that is an immediate red flag that has no bearing on anything related to the job.
This is a transactional relationship. You're paying me to do a job.
Correct. Right.
Am I doing the job really good? Am I underpaid for it? Yeah. So I'd like to be paid more.
I've seen previous colleagues make that mistake, and it does not go well. And the HR teams that I've worked with have really frowned upon that.
It also shows a huge lack of EQ.
Yeah.
Because
exactly.
that has nothing to do with what compensation is based on. Compensation is not based on your spend level and your expense level as a family, right? It has nothing to do with whether you choose to put your kids in private school and somebody else chooses to put their kids in public school. You don't deserve to make more money as a result of that decision.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a great point. So here's the deal. The worst thing that can happen is they can say no, right?
Actually, I would argue.
Well, if you do it badly.
Correct. If you do it badly,
you look bad.
You look bad. And I've definitely seen plenty of colleagues who, and I think it also, you got to feel out the company as well. I've been at companies where it is extremely frowned upon to ask for compensation adjustments.
Yeah.
It's more the expectation is that as the scope of your role increases,
Yeah.
your compensation will increase.
But you also, Andrew, you're a white male.
Mm-hmm.
You may have come into some roles getting paid higher than others.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that, but I'm statistically going to go out on a limb and say that like that could be the case.
I've been in positions throughout my career where I've been underpaid at certain times.
Yeah.
I've been at market and I've been overpaid at certain times. And I can point to almost every single instance. I knew that because I did my homework on the market. And, and typically when you go into new roles and you're recently promoted, a lot of times you're going to be underpaid. Right?
Yeah.
If you've got a new director role, you're going to be, and it was a promotion within the company.
Yeah. And you were like, I know I was underpaid, and underpaid implies I'm not paid fairly, but I know I was, might have been one of the lower paid directors, but I also was one of the youngest directors.
Yeah.
Right. And so some of it is like, yeah, you have to understand the broader context of like, was someone taking a chance on you? Have you now proven yourself in that role? Don't go into a place that you've been in for 6 months and ask for a raise when you haven't even proven yourself. Because that is when the worst thing that can happen is you look bad and they already sort of question some things about you. And now you look like you just are completely clueless to like what's going on in the world, right? What's going on in the context of your job and your company and everything else. And so I think my point on like the worst thing that can happen is like, you don't get fired for asking for a raise, but if you come in and do it sloppy, it certainly can reflect poorly on you.
Yeah.
So everything we just said though was like, do this thoughtfully.
Yeah.
And do it if you have a strong case for change. Do not do it if you were on a performance improvement plan. Don't go asking for a raise.
Yeah,
Jeez.
right.
As my kids would say, you dumb ball, don't go ask for a raise.
Let's talk about the outside offer.
Okay. I just had this conversation with a friend.
I think you and I may have a different opinion on this one.
Okay. I'm curious to hear yours. Well, I'll tell you mine real quick.
So, okay.
You go.
Okay, I'll go. If you're underpaid, it's very hard to get a company to move you to where you think like you're at market. And I'd say if a company is willing to underpay you and you believe you are, and you've got to do your research to make sure that you are, I believe the only thing to do is to go to leave and go get the outside offer. And I'm not one to recommend using that offer as leverage, because ultimately if the company was willing to underpay you, it's not a place where you want to be.
Yeah. Yes, and.
Yes,
right?
and.
Look, at a big company, there's just thousands of employees. There's not somebody like looking over every single salary every minute and like, so
you'd be surprised. I mean,
well, yeah, that's fair.
Big companies, they literally have an entire compensation team. Like literally, there's a team of four or five people, right? That are
right. And I knew all my direct salaries, and I knew if somebody was under. Yeah, you're right. Okay, but there were sometimes reasons when it wasn't easy to just like magically increase everything overnight. So. Okay, I would say like yes and. So I think there's two things you can do, or I don't want to say two things. There's multiple paths you can take, right? You can actually have an outside offer. I would always suggest going to, if you want to stay at your existing company and you think there's a chance you want to stay, seeing what they would do. This happened to me, Andrew. You remember, I stayed at Home Depot. I had an offer from IHG. I stayed at Home Depot, and Home Depot promised me some things and I was like, you know what? You gotta love the one you're with, like at that time I was like 5 years out of school. I had, I was very young and naive, and I thought, I love this company. I'm going to be here for the rest of my life. And they've given me so much over the last 5 years. And
yeah, you bled orange.
I bled orange. And so, but then like 6 months later, there was a reorg, and I was like, I'm going to see if this thing at IHG is still around. Right. And so anyways, the idea though is there's nothing wrong with, if you actually have an outside offer, it just shouldn't be a bluff. Like I was talking to somebody the other day that was like, well, I don't actually want this other job. And I was like, well, then do not use it, because you need to be, because some companies aren't that jazzed about you, and you're going to find out right then, because they're going to be like, oh, congratulations on this other offer. Like, I hope you enjoy it. They're not going to even attempt to counter.
I guess I think there's a difference of actually using the offer or notifying your current employer that you have the offer. So if you get an offer and say it's a, 10 to 15% above, I think there's nothing wrong with you potentially having a discussion having that career discussion with your current employer and saying, I feel like I'm underpaid. And these are all the reasons why.
Yeah.
I think it's okay to have that discussion. What I wouldn't do is I wouldn't disclose that you have the offer, and you see if the company is going to respond and see how the conversation goes. Because I feel like putting it out there that you've got an offer is it's backing them into a corner. And I think if the job is really that good, you can give your employer the opportunity to make it right, but then ultimately, if they don't change, then you got to be willing to move and jump ship.
Yeah. Look, it's such a personal decision.
Right.
There's not a right or wrong. You gotta have a sense. There's some companies that are real weird about people leaving, and they have a very an unnecessarily territorial or an unrealistically territorial response to people leaving when it should be a little bit more, transactional. But you also could go to your company and say, look, if you really like where you're at, you can go. I mean, there's some people that are just going and they're putting in their resignation, and then all of a sudden they feel that's what happened to me at Home Depot.
Right.
I wasn't trying to fight.
Yeah.
I was literally just putting my resignation.
Right.
They were fighting for me. And I was like, wait a minute.
You and I were both in that situation. When I put my resignation in, we both were offered to
more to stay.
I was offered a promotion to stay, and I ultimately turned it down because I think the counter offer is a very slippery slope.
Yeah, well, it varies, and it's not even that you're underpaid. I was offered more to stay, but that doesn't mean I was underpaid. That means all of a sudden when someone's backs up against a wall, sometimes they can find more money, especially when you've been promoted from within for a long time, right? But I'll just say there is a middle ground too, where you can, if you're really very loyal to where you're at, and I was just giving my friend this advice the other day. I'm like, you can go in and say, look, I have an offer from another company. I don't want to take it. I really like working here. I want to stay. But this has shown me that there are other people and there's other companies where I can make more money and they value this role higher. What are my prospects here to advance and make more money? Right? And you'll get a sense of how you're valued, right? And you'll get a sense, it's an interesting way to say. I always think of this if you were to say this in a relationship, look,
I've got this other option.
Yeah, I don't want to leave my marriage, but I'm just saying, this other person was you seem kind of cool. So you want to fight for me or what? You gonna take the trash out or what?
Why don't we throw this out to the listeners? Anybody got some good stories about how this has worked well for them, or how this has completely imploded and backfired on them? I'd love.
That's a good point.
I'd love to hear.
And maybe we'll do a follow up on some career discussions too.
Because I don't think there's a lot of paths that these can take, and I think it is very situational. Both the company you're at, your position, and ultimately your boss too, right? If your boss
how they respond,
right? If your boss is going to fight for you, it's a very different story.
Yeah, very true. And so you could go down a million different paths with how that works out, but those are some of the ways to make more money. So look, the other thing in that category is you can go look for another job where you're going to make more money.
Yeah.
You might realize you are at a company that just doesn't pay as well as other companies in the market. And you might just realize hey, I got to leave this company and I'm going to go somewhere else and it might even be a career field, right? That you're going to consider switching career paths or making a, mild adjustment from, this field to that field. And that's okay. So there's nothing wrong with that. I think you just want to do it very thoughtfully and not make it a haphazard thing, but just do it thoughtfully, right? Think through all of the different elements and why you want to make a switch and what sort of, investments you might need to make in your skill building and other things. But then there's a whole other category of ways to make more money. And that's in the second job, side hustle stuff, right?
Yep.
And let's talk about those for a second. Yeah.
So I've done it a couple times in my career. When I was a programmer back in the day, early 2000s, programming skills were there were a lot of people looking for programming
Yeah.
skills. And so I was
Now AI can do that.
correct.
for you.
AI can do that. AI can do everything for you. So I was working as a programmer, and I had a couple people approach me that were looking for help, and AK Consulting started. And so I started doing some moonlighting with some software projects that provided a nice additional source of income I did it for a couple of years until when I was at Burton and Gardner's before Home Depot. So once I got to Home Depot, it was game over. It was working 12-hour days at Home Depot was plenty. Yeah, but it helped. Some of those funds helped kind of start building that nest egg. But I think in hindsight, my overall recommendation and strategy is that you can get a better ROI from accelerating your career growth than you can by most side hustles. Now, if you're doing freelance work and you're doing lots of these different types of side hustles, and that's your primary income, but if you have a primary job in a company that you're working 40 hours a week at, doing an extra 5 to 10 hours on the side, you can likely make more money in the long term by being a better employee, by putting those hours into your current job. Now, yes, you're not going to get paid at it, but if you make your boss
You're not going to get paid in the short
term, but I think long term, that's a better approach.
Yeah, if that gets you the promotion,
Correct.
that gets you a 20% pay bump. But I will say that's in like the type of jobs we were in, Andrew.
Yeah.
I look at Justin from the Price of Avocado Toast podcast. He was a teacher at one point, right?
Correct.
You can't do any, there's no getting there's certain promotions, obviously, but he waited tables at night before they had kids.
Like Crystal did tutoring on the side as a teacher. Like, I think that is like for people who are in
your salary's capped at some point.
Correct. Right. Like you're a teacher, a government worker, right? Somewhere where your career progression is, I'll give just Crystal as an example. She literally could not make more money. The only way you could make more money as a school teacher in Georgia is by the years of experience you had and by getting additional degrees.
Graduate degree,
so that's
or a promotion.
So that's what she did, right? She got 2 graduate degrees, and that helped her to make some more money. But in those instances, and if you have a more flexible schedule, and a lot of times in those jobs, you are literally locked into 40 hours a week, whereas, corporate America, we were working 50, 60 hours a week, right? And so I think those types of jobs are absolutely great examples where a side hustle can work.
Well, and that's a good example too, where, we'll use teaching as an example, but the career field you're in, and they're all going to have opportunities like this. If you're a teacher, there's a very clear path that has a strong ROI for getting an advanced degree and for making more money. And you can get an advanced degree in a very affordable way, or you can get it in a very expensive way, right? So you can very strategically, you don't get more money if you get your advanced degree from Harvard versus if you get it at like an online program.
And what's even better is the way Crystal did it was she got a grant from Vermont to go get her advanced degree, and she didn't pay for it.
Yeah, there's a lot of different programs that will do that for advanced degrees. And if you're a teacher, there's things where like you can do the after school care, you can make extra money, you can be tutoring, so there's things within your career field where there's unique opportunities for you to make extra money. And you want to, lean into those things. Might be much easier than things that, have, you don't have any skill set in or anything like that. And then there's just like a whole world of these like side hustles you could be doing, right? We'll talk about a side hustle Andrew's doing, actually, but that will be at the end. Actually, that's your main hustle now. But it could have been your side hustle when you were working.
It was,
right?
Yes.
You could have, let's say you needed to make more money when you were working. You did not need more stress in your life, but if you were like needed to pay off debt, you could have done what you're doing now while you were working and just had even less time in your life. But there's all the stuff in the gig economy, right? You could like drive for Uber on weekends. You could do, Uber Eats,
DoorDash.
Food. Yeah, DoorDash. I couldn't think of the word. DoorDash food delivery. You could sign up and do like Amazon deliveries over the holidays. You could have I know people who have like landscape businesses on the side. I was talking to somebody about clearing something at like a rental property, and I had seen their car. I just called their number from the side of their van. I saw it in my neighborhood. And he was like, oh, I work at Emory, so I'm only available like nights and weekends. And I was like, yeah, good for you, dude. Like, and so, you could do all sorts of things, right? From mowing lawns.
There's just one thing you can't do, and that's you can't do multi-level marketing.
Right. I was going to say, you also can't do something that's like a conflict of interest. And, you can't.
Yes, you do
Right.
need to be very careful about that.
Yes. Hey, Andrew, I got into like a debate with, I don't remember who on this, but like there's some term for it, but where you have like two full-time remote jobs at the same time. Were we debating this at dinner? one night?
Yeah, we've talked about this. Overemployed.
Overemployed.
Yes.
Right. I would argue it's like illegal, but anyways.
There, just like everything in this world, there's a subreddit on overemployed.
Okay.
And there are some fascinating stories.
Let me
about it.
clarify what overemployed means, because even the term I think is a little misleading. This means like I could be a project manager for HomeDepot.com and it's a remote job, and I'm also a project manager for IHG.com. They're both remote jobs. I never go into the office. They're in different cities. That's not a good example, and they don't know that I've got two different jobs. Two different companies are paying me $80,000 a year to be a project manager, and I'm able to swing them both.
Yeah.
And I somehow can finagle my meetings, like not at the same time.
So the Wall Street Journal dropped an article on this about 18 months ago or so, and it rippled through the boardroom at our company. I know at my company, and I know lots of other companies, and it was like the talk of the week. And so HR teams have been scrambling to try and crack down on this because it has gotten very popular, especially in a post-COVID world when a lot of jobs were work from home.
Yeah.
But there's some, if you want some entertainment, go read the overemployed subreddit. And
what's your quick take on it, though? Like, how do you feel about it?
Oh, it's definitely the
Are
difference.
You pro it?
No,
like if you're,
no.
Okay. I'm not a big fan because it's like hard to be a good employee. I'm old school. It's hard to be a good employee when you're scamming and doing two different things.
Right. So, like the key thing for what I consider a side hustle is you are specifically doing it outside of the hours of your working, right? So like, I'll just use my own example, right? When I'm doing coaching, I was doing coaching on Sunday nights, right?
Yeah, nights and weekends.
Not even just the Sunday night, right? And so it was very outside of work hours. And so that's, but the listening to people try and juggle their 3 conference calls when they're double booked, they're managing their LinkedIn profiles, right? They've had people who've like gotten caught by it and they've tripped up and they forgot to hit mute on one conference call and they're open on another conference call. The stories are wild.
It could ruin your reputation.
Yes.
Anyways, it's not the focus of this episode, but I guess look, it's a way to earn more money. So. But
I don't recommend it to the listeners.
Yes, I don't recommend it either. But we noted that it's an option. So back to side hustles. There's everything from you could start doing drop shipping on Amazon to like real estate, right? Mm-hmm. And having rental properties, and like that's a legit side hustle. Mm-hmm. I think my biggest advice on this is there are people who will try to Andrew, you made a reference to like MLMs, multi-level marketing schemes. Don't fall for scams. There's a lot of get rich quick schemes where someone's going to tell you if you pay them $5,000 and attend this real estate conference, they're going to teach you how to make all this extra money. Like you're now out $5,000 and they probably didn't teach you anything that you couldn't learn from reading a book and
or listening to a podcast
videos. Yeah. And so I also say entrepreneurship isn't for everyone. Side hustles aren't for everyone. Some of the way that you might want to know yourself and the way that you might want to focus on making extra money might be still working for someone else, right? It might be like tutoring after school or doing nannying, babysitting. There's so many different ways as an adult that you can make extra money. And I just think you want to think about your unique skill sets, what you enjoy doing, what hours you have available, what works within your life. Focus on that. I think we've gone through, to me, what are the various kind of categories and types of things you can focus on, like whether in your current job, whether getting a new job or whether having an additional job in addition to your core job to try to make more money.
Yep.
And then the other way you make more money is you just spend less money. But again, we have hundreds of podcasts focused on that. So not the purpose of today's. Andrew, do you think we can shift to the bonus we've promised?
Yeah. Let's talk about it.
Speaking of making more money, we talked like...
I just
what
looked it up.
episode was it?
I just looked it up. We talked about 2 months ago. So it
What
was,
episode was that?
April,
It was early
it was
withdrawal.
April 20 it was April 22nd.
Okay.
And so my quote official, my last day in the office was on April 18th. So it was just after I had left is when you and I talked about it. I think the episode released a little bit, maybe a week later after that, but it was very fresh in terms of when I'd left Carter's when we
And
last talked.
Been about 2 months.
Yeah.
Though, right?
Yep.
And you talked about like 3 different paths. And one of them was like brushing off your resume and looking at what's out there because you were, didn't feel totally comfortable saying you're retired yet or like starting, something more entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
And you remember I was like, oh, I hope you get into something because I don't want you to I just really for your own sanity and for a bunch of reasons because I've seen the light, Andrew. I didn't want you to go back to corporate America because I know your financials and I know where you've been. And I just think you need some time to like. So you're Andrew in typical fashion. You didn't sit around doing nothing for too long.
No.
I don't even think you did it for like 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Tell us what you have been up to.
Yeah. So when I left in April, I felt like I was about 50-50 between, hey, I'm going to brush off the resume. I'm going to look for some jobs. I'm going to apply for stuff, go on some interviews, and kind of go down that path. And I was kind of like 50-50. And then, the other path was where I was going to go down the entrepreneurial route. I was going to try and expand my coaching business, which I'd been doing for the past 2 years. And then I also teased a little bit about a kind of this partnership with the bike shop. Well, things moved very quickly at the end of April into May, where the partnership with the bike shop came into focus very quickly. But the owner of the bike shop, and then
did he like approach you, or
we had been having ongoing discussions, and I think the real,
like even before you left.
Yeah, before I left.
Okay.
Yeah, we had talked about it about what it might look like. But really, the spark that really got things moving was this fit bike that I had been looking for became available.
And where did you see this? Was this just like
It was
like following
literally
Craigslist?
it was a post. It was a post on an online forum.
Like a bike forum?
Literally a bike fitters forum. Like super specialized. It's actually like a forum within a forum.
Is this like on Reddit or
it's
what?
on Slow? It's called Slow Twitch. And if you're in the endurance community, kind of everyone knows about Slow Twitch. And then on Slow Twitch,
I'm not familiar with Slow Twitch
because you're not like in the
know,
endurance
right,
community,
yeah.
right? You're not an Ironman.
I'd like to be.
And so there's a fitters forum on Slow Twitch. And so this guy had posted that the guy who lived in Connecticut, he had a fit studio and he had 2 of these very specialized fit bikes. There are only 200 of them in the world, and they're widely regarded as the best fit bikes in the world. And so these became available, and I started having a conversation with him, and these bikes are about 300 pounds each. They're extremely heavy.
You mean the fit machine?
The fit
thing?
machine, yes, correct.
Okay.
The fit machine. And so I started negotiating with him, and basically he said, I really want to sell everything as a package. He's like, I'm closed down my fit studio. I got a turnkey solution. So we started negotiating. We came to an agreement, and then it became to, okay, the logistics of this. How do I get these things to Georgia? And so I decided to pull the trigger. I flew up to Connecticut. I rented a pickup truck and went out on an adventure and to get these fit bikes back to Georgia. And so I drove them back to Georgia.
And for people that don't know you, Andrew, like you're a pretty frugal guy. You've made good money, but like you got an emergency fund, you got plenty of money saved up. So this was an amount of money that you just had in the bank, right?
Yeah.
You could just like
Yeah.
And you could spend it.
Yeah.
It was a low risk amount. For
Correct.
you
So
to
I
put in
invested
this.
$12,000 in buying.
I like that you said the amount.
Yeah.
Very nice.
So
Okay.
it was $12,000.
You've spent that much on a bike before.
I have
right?
spent that much on
Okay,
a bike. Yeah.
so
So I spent $12,000 on all the equipment and then also the travel costs, the rental, truck rental, everything to get these things to Georgia.
But you don't have a bike shop.
I don't have a bike shop. And so part of the negotiation was with the owner of Whitetail Bikes, where I set up is he has let me set up.
Shout out to Whitetail
Yes,
Bikes.
Sean at Whitetail Bikes. He let me set up my fit studio inside of his shop,
And he just had the space available.
it's a tight space, so we're making it work. Ideally, we'd have like my own dedicated space, but we've got a spot in the front of the store where we got everything set up and we're up and running. And so it took a lot to kind of get everything set up and then to go through learning all the software and everything. So it took me a couple weeks. I had a couple people come in and help me doing some test fits and all of that. Got a lot of training on it. And then
But this is like are you having fun? This is like your jam.
Oh, yeah.
Like
This
learning
is
a new piece of software.
Correct. Learning a new
like-
piece of software.
Learn how to fit people
I've
to
always
bikes.
been very into the way I fit myself on my own bikes. And so it's you're dealing with millimeters on people and you got lots of different variables and it's kind of like a puzzle. And I love kind of solving those types of
You're
puzzles.
like optimizing.
Correct. It's a complete
right?
optimization process. And so it's kind of right in my wheelhouse. And so I've just been reading as much as I possibly can. I've watched hours and hours of training on both the software, the machines. The machines are very complicated, and also the software is fairly complicated. And so, just learning all of that it took me a couple weeks. And so that was probably till the end of May. Beginning of June is when I started doing my first taking my first paying fit customers. And then the other thing that I started doing at the end of May was researching custom footbeds. So in the cycling industry, you've got these hard carbon soled shoes, and having really good foot support is important. And so there's some companies out there that make custom footbed solutions. And so I've partnered up with MasterFit, who is really well known in the ski and snowboard industry for doing custom insoles, and less so in the cycling industry, but I've become a MasterFit certified retailer. I invested in about $6,000 in purchasing a MasterFit custom footbed system. And then a couple weeks ago, I flew up to New Jersey for a race. And as part of that trip, I went to MasterFit's kind of head fitter, MasterFit University teacher, and he trained me for a day on how to use the system. And so I received that system last week and started doing my first custom footbeds actually on Wednesday this week. So between the bike fits, the custom footbeds, and then also the coaching that I'm still doing, I've now got 11 coaching clients that I'm working with. So between all three of those, there's absolutely no retirement in this life right now. So I'm all in on the entrepreneurial venture. And I think at this point, the thought of going back to the corporate job is pretty far removed from my thought process.
So I have a few questions.
Yes.
By the way, I love this and I'm super happy for you.
Thank you.
Will you ever make as much money doing this as you did in corporate America?
Likely no.
Okay. I assumed that,
Yeah,
by the way.
Right.
Are you having fun and enjoying your days?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a completely different lifestyle where I have complete control over my time. So I decide how many fits I want to book in a day.
If you got a big training schedule
Yeah.
you need to meet, you could just take 2 weeks off.
Yeah, I'll give you an example of today. I left the house at 7 a.m. I put in 5 hours on the bike. We did almost 100 miles. And then I had fit appointments from 2 o'clock in the afternoon till 6 o'clock. Rode home from the shop, got home here 7:30, ate dinner, and jumped on with you. And then I've got Masters Nationals coming up in a couple of weeks. So I'm taking a couple, I've basically blocked my schedule for that. And then the big one is I booked my trip to go to the World Championships in Australia in October for 2 weeks. So that's a trip that I've been talking about doing for the last couple of years. And it was always do I really want to burn 2 weeks of vacation to go to
without your family,
without the family
Yeah.
to go to the World Championships? And it was always like, no, I don't want to burn 2 weeks of vacation. But now with my flexible schedule, I decided that I can still coach my clients from Australia. I won't be doing any fittings or footbeds from Australia for 2 weeks.
You can also take 2 weeks off.
Yeah, I can take 2 weeks off,
all of it,
right?
you know?
And it
and you look like an even better cycling coach when you're like, sorry, I'm going to be out for 2 weeks for the World Championships.
Yeah, right. So yeah, it's I'd say the stress in my life is very different. There is still some stress, and the stress is around the education and the learning of the systems.
Yeah.
So
you're brand new. You're 2 months in.
correct.
This.
Like I created my first custom footbeds this week, and it was definitely stressful. I've got paying clients. I have high expectations of myself. I am charging premium prices for a premium product, and I want to be able to deliver on that promise. And so it was definitely a little stressful in terms of doing those footbeds this week. But I think the more I do them, the better I will get, and the more comfortable I'll be at it. And the same goes for the fits as well. I've probably had 12 or 13 fit clients so far, and it's every one I feel like I get more efficient at it, and I know what the things that I'm looking for as I see more and more people. It's interesting. The more feet I see, the more I learn about feet, and I had someone yesterday, and then I had someone today, and like their feet were completely different.
Yeah, you want to see my feet? I got real high arches.
I
feel like you were about to say, "I'd love to see."
I'd love
feet.
to see your feet. You should definitely stop by the shop sometime, and I can take a look at your feet and see how your arches look, see how flexible your first and fifth metatarsal are, and you'll be good to go.
I'm not even sure where those metatarsals are, but sure. Is that my pinky toe?
Your big toe is your first metatarsal, and your pinky is your fifth metatarsal.
Yeah, figured that one out on my own.
Yep, nice job.
So, I had a question, but I got distracted on the thinking
feet.
about my feet. So is the type of stress you're feeling though? It's like self-induced. Is it different than what you felt when you were at Carter's?
Yeah, I mean it's 100% self-induced. Like it's completely night and day. Like I can't even put them in the same ballpark. And then also, I had a conversation. I have not talked to too many people from Carter since I left. That was somewhat a little bit intentional, and also
like
just because I've been so busy as well. Yeah. But I had a conversation with one of my direct reports a couple weeks ago, and just listening to her talk for 30 minutes about everything that was going on in her world, and I was just like, oh my goodness, I can't.
Did it make you like? I've had those where I'm like,
I cannot believe I dealt with some of that, right?
And you almost have like not even like PTSD, but you're just sort of like, it's so interesting how quickly you can remove yourself from that and be like, oh wow, yeah, I'm good. I don't miss that.
Yeah,
I'm good without it.
Yeah, definitely. There is no like, oh man, I kind of wish I was back there, or man, did I really make a bad decision on that? I mean, there is none of that. I think. It's interesting. People have seen me riding in the middle of the day now. Like a lot of people know about the story within my closer friend circle. Mm-hmm. And it definitely is not a retirement in any way, shape, or form at this point, right? It is definitely a entrepreneurial venture. I mean, I'm working 4 days a week. The shop is open Tuesday through Sunday. I'm working Tuesday through Friday. I'm booking clients on most of those days at this point. And so it's definitely, Crystal's happy. I'm not at home in the house hanging out, right? And yeah, it's been really good. I think probably the only downside is my $2,000 a month Cobra coverage. That's the one that kind of really stings right now.
Yeah.
Like
and
my,
because you've got some income coming in too, that's going to be tricky on like what you qualify for.
well,
post-Cobra.
for this year, I won't qualify for anything. I'm
Yeah.
going to be on Cobra for the next 18 months. And so, plus I've got my DCP payment next year. So it's going to be Cobra all the way through next year. So I'm looking at $36,000 of Cobra coverage. But yeah, if you look at when we go through our expenses, like my insurance costs are by far and away the biggest
yeah.
expense by a mile. So
It's sort of like your entrepreneurship tax.
Correct.
That you have to pay, unfortunately.
yeah, but
yeah.
it's okay.
Okay, last question.
Yes.
How you feeling about money just in general? Like, I know at some point
Yeah.
you were like, oh, I still need, I could like make more money and pad more and like,
Yeah.
but now that you're on the other side of like, you're not receiving a paycheck, you're paying that Cobra, like.
Yeah, so the return of the market has certainly helped the situation. Right. If the market had taken another 25% dump, I may have had a little bit of a different feeling on it. I'd say my goal from the entrepreneurial side is that in an ideal world, I'm able to cover our living expenses with coaching, bike fits, footbeds, and dividends from VTSAX. And so I think I am well on my way to be able to do that. Actually, I shouldn't say that's the ideal. The ideal is I cover all the living expenses through just the coaching and the bike fit and the footbed work.
Yeah,
and
including Cobra.
And then,
including
yes,
insurance,
correct,
right?
including Cobra, right?
Yeah.
And so then if I'm not pulling anything from the retirement, and I've kind of like, I've shifted my mental structure to say that any money that I'm bringing in right now is we are spending. And so if I can get to that level, that would be fantastic. Like, I'm not even talking about, then it's truly not a retirement in any way, shape, or form, right? It's not, I've not stopped working. I am not drawing on a portfolio, right?
Yeah.
It is, we are living our life and I'm making enough money to cover those
made a career
expenses,
shift.
but I'm not saving additional money, and because I don't need to.
Yeah, it's
And
a little
so-
bit of coast-fi.
It's exactly that, a little bit
You
of that.
pre-save for retirement. You
Right.
pre-save for the kids' college. You just need to
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
cover your annual expenses, and you're great.
Yeah, and this has been the career shift that has reduced the stress level significantly.
If only everyone could like fall into such a lovely kind of post-corporate life opportunity. But you didn't fall into this. This has been something that you've been planting seeds for a while, right?
Yeah. I mean, definitely the reason I started the coaching business was because I thought that it could be a bridge for me. I think what has been interesting is that the bike shop partnership and the fit work, I was not thinking about or expecting, and so that's been a great bonus. But yeah, when I started coaching 2 years ago, I was like, hey, this could be a great post corporate job for me.
Yeah, and they all kind of fit together nicely. Do you have less interest in financial coaching now that you're kind of so focused on cycling?
I think maybe at this point in time, yes.
Like you're not going to proactively push on
Correct.
that at all.
Primarily because the cycling season has its ups and downs, right? Like we're kind of like in the peak summer of cycling. I expect things to calm down from both my racing and training perspective in the wintertime. And so I think in the fall and winter, I'd like to do potentially some more financial coaching. I also think that my hourly rate, I can make more from my cycling coaching and fits because of my expertise in the industry. Right? I think I actually still have an interest in getting my CFP just because I'm interested in it.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like I have like my cycling CFPs. Like I've got the credentials and the experience and the championship jerseys to have I have the domain expertise within cycling.
You've got the network and like this is the right
correct,
timing, and you're
all that.
you're in that world, and you might not be in 10 years, right?
Yeah, correct. So.
Well, I'm very happy for you. I hope everyone who felt like we left him hanging now has a little bit more insight into what Andrew has been up to, and then also how to make more money in your own life.
Right. And I mean, we can I'll put a plug in if you want to get some cycling coaching. Andrew Knight coaching is available. And if you're in the Atlanta area, you're very welcome to stop by Whitetail Bicycles in Milton anytime. I'd love to meet some listeners who are cycling fans.
Nice. I actually want to come and check it out.
Yes, you should definitely come.
When you have a light day, you have to let me know. Actually, when I don't have COVID and when you have a light day, I'll come.
And MasterFit is working on a new and improved running custom footbed. And so I actually want to expand the business beyond just cycling footbeds. I want to start doing running shoe footbeds and also golf shoe footbeds. So I think there's a big market for golf shoes in Atlanta as well. So partner with some pro shops. The nice thing about the system is it's completely portable, and so all I need is an AC outlet. And so the other thing is I have not done any marketing around all of this either. This is all just word of mouth right now. And I haven't even done that much on even posting on Instagram. I've done like 1 or 2 posts on it, and I've actually just been keeping busy enough for the past couple of weeks that I haven't needed to do it. But yeah, I think right now it's kind of like all the people who know me, the people who are close to Whitetail, who see me every day in there. Those are the clients right now. Although I did have someone on Instagram reach out to me last week, and they booked a fit with me on Wednesday. This week that saw that I was doing footbeds, and so they came in. But yeah, I want to do some more marketing and branding around it to get the buzz out.
That's awesome. Okay, well, thank you all for listening. Andrew, thanks for all of your awesomeness. We always appreciate you guys listening and spending some time with us. We always love it if you want to leave us a written review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. We really appreciate it. And also, share this episode with a friend or family member. Especially if you guys have been talking about how to ask for a raise or opportunities to make more money. This is a good discussion topic for friends and family.
If you have thoughts or questions, we'd love to hear from you. You can leave a voicemail or text us at 404-981-3370 or hit us up on Instagram.
Yeah, and you can let us know your thoughts on the debate over how to deal with third-party offers and whether you should use it as leverage for your current job and how to approach that tactfully.
I'll also throw it out there if anybody's got some overemployment experience. We'd love to hear about that.
Right, yes.
Both positive or negative.
Yes. Okay, well, thank you guys. Thanks, Andrew.
Yep.
Bye.
Thanks, Maggie. Bye.